Thank you, Zoom robot, for letting us know that. Welcome, everybody. Oh, I'm so excited that we have such a great group here. So many people coming out to celebrate the wonderful poets that we are going to hear from in just a minute. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Megan Marshall. I'm the director of the Hugh C. Hyde Living Writer series. And I'm so happy to kick off another semester amongst the virtual ether, in which we'll be celebrating the work of stellar authors and the many ways in which literature brings us together and engages us. And what a better way to kick off the spring series than with two wonderful poets who are both Sdsu MFA alums and beloved members of our local San Diego literary community. Before I begin introducing them, I'd like to thank those who have helped to make this series and this semester possible. And of course, that includes all of our friends here at Love Library, Markle Tumlin, who is co-hosting with me this evening. Also Danya Mukahal, Laurel Bliss, Jessica Savala, and Rebecca Williamson. And then I do also want to thank the Department of English and Comparative Literature for their continued support of this series. Now, just a couple reminders. I feel like this is not our first rodeo. At this point, we've all been on Zoom, I imagine, at some point, but just a reminder to please keep your mics muted as each of our presenters are sharing. And then just a reminder for those who are joining us now, this event is being recorded and also streamed on Facebook Live. And a couple other things too. Please, if you have a chance, check out the Hugh C. Hyde Living Writer series on YouTube. We have a really cool page. All of our event recordings are on that page. And also some fun videos, responses, creative work from my students who are enrolled in the Living Writers course. So a lot of really cool, entertaining and informative stuff on our channel. So please check out Living Writers on YouTube. And then also, if you want some more information on the other events that we have coming up this semester, then check out our event site on the community website on Sdsu MFA's page. I threw it in the chat a little bit earlier, so scroll up to the top and click on it, and hopefully you'll have a chance to attend the rest of the wonderful events that we have going on this semester. So tonight I'll be giving a short introduction for each of our poets, and then after each of them has presented, we'll have some time at the end for you to ask questions if you have them. So, but for now, without further ado, I'm switching to speaker view, and I'm excited to introduce our first featured reader for the evening. Betsy Littrell is a quirky and creative soccer mom to 4 boys who recently found time to earn her MFA in creative writing from Sdsu. She was a finalist for the Rash Award in poetry and a semi-finalist for her chapbook Backwash with button poetry. When she's not writing, or when she is, she enjoys a good cup of tea, a glass of rosé, and peaceful moments by the beach with a book in hand. Having grown up in Massachusetts, she is a passionate and superstitious Red Sox fan, and also cheers for Liverpool soccer with her partner, who makes her laugh like nobody else can. Her first full-length collection, This Woman is Haunted, was published in 2020, and her work has appeared in several journals. Her chapbook, Dragon in My Purse, is going to come out this year in October, so keep an eye out for that. And I just wanted to add that Betsy was also a student in the Living Writers course while she was earning her MFA at Sdsu. And so it's so special that we've kind of come full circle now, and she is a featured reader for the series. Of her first length book, This Woman is Haunted, poet Blast Falconer raves, Littrell's collection brings opposing forces, the public and the private self, the past and the present, the refined and the coarse, together into the compressed lyric mode until the poems begin to vibrate with urgency. So please join me in welcoming Betsy Littrell.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Marshall, for having me back. I know, I don't know if you remember, but one of the things I said to you when I left your class was I was going to be back reading. And here I am, and it didn't take that long. So I'm really excited to be back here reading, meeting my goals, and I appreciate you having me back. Thank you to everybody who makes it possible. It would be amazing if, this was the old days when we were in the Love Library doing this, but at the same time, I'm really happy to have this on Zoom because I have friends and family from all over the place here right now, you know, on the East Coast and in the other country. So I'm just really happy for you all to join me tonight. And thank you so much for being here, especially those who are up on the East Coast, you know, staying up late for this one. So without further ado, I will get started. The first one I'm going to read to you. I don't know if anybody's following along with the book. I'll try to give page numbers as I'm reading. Most of my reading is going to be from the book. The first one I wrote in your class, Professor Marshall, is one of my invitations for your final project. So if you're already thinking about your final project, thinking about the creative one, yeah, it could end up in a book one day. How about that? So here we go. And this one, again, there's pretty much a story behind every poem, right? This one is 100% true. Just so you're aware of that. Not all of them are, but my mom is not on here, so I can say that, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute here. But it's on page 5, called Trailer Park After Dark. Trailer Park After Dark is not the bar on Fifth Avenue of the same name, but the bipolar mood of a hormonal teenage girl. At 15, I pounded my fists and legs on the ground until the tears started to flow. That was the year I first took a drink. That first time was with Kim, who bribed a man to buy us Ice House and Zima at a convenience store. She drove us to the woods where we laughed hysterically and talked about boys we liked. We pissed all over the pine cones, dirt, and weeds. Somehow we made it back to the trailer she lived in. I was thirsty. I mean sand in my throat thirsty. I chugged half a bottle of cranberry juice and immediately threw up all over the long t-shirt I had changed into to sleep while I stumbled over to the sink to finish vomiting. It was Kim's shirt, and I felt bad for the dark red stain I left on it. She told me it was a good thing I threw up, that I'd feel better in the morning because of it. I met my parents in church the next morning, hungover but holding it together. God judged me while I sang Cranberry Vomit still on my breath. The next one I'm going to read, if you've seen it, as part of a series, a tea series. I'm going to read the morning tea one. It's on page 15. It's a concrete poem, which just means it's in shape, and this one is in the shape of a teapot. And there's morning tea, afternoon tea, and evening tea. And I'm just going to read the morning tea one to you. When I woke up, my hair seemed a shade darker, perhaps to match brown eyes. I remember how I threw up after eating an apple and cheese, pregnant with my second son. Why didn't I update the album with new photographs? I tossed the drooping white roses tinged with brown and cloudy water. But I didn't have it in me to make the bed. I boiled water for my tea bag, wishing it was wine, contemplated my ghostly heart, locked myself in the bathroom and cried into my tea. I wondered if the tea would still soothe me with the salty tears. I tasted it, but I didn't know. I didn't know. This one I know was one of Sandra's favorites, a nice little lyrical poem that Sandra liked on page 16 called Unbending. Her fingers long and lean, a piano player's. She finds her hand strumming dark notes, adagio. This is who I am. The notes become wild, ferocious, without giving her body warning. Vivacissimo. That is who I am. She smells blue in the air. Fingers relax, unbending. And I'm going to go ahead and read the one on page 17 next as well. This one's a lot more fictional. I'm sure, if you know anything about me, and when you hear it, you'll be like, okay, that's definitely not real. It's just one of those that, sometimes you play around with fiction in your poems too. For some reason, I told people I was born in a gas station, the one where pump number 3 is always broken. My eyes are the color of the Wrigley spearmint gum package, found in aisle number 2 and also by the cash register. I like being 39, but I don't know if I want to be 40. Maybe I'll drink a bottle of wine in the rain instead. I remember eating popsicles in my flower jumper. You wanted red, but green, a green so green, sour like limes was my favorite. Those days, I made mud pies while Robin washed her car after a downpour. I wove a crown of daisies, dirty after rolling down a hill. I think I'll braid another crown before I go check to see if pump number 3 works today. My money is on no. And I hear the fire truck siren. I'm just gonna keep on going right over to page 18. This one's called Bus Rider. The man at the bus stop startled me. It was late at night, and I was carrying a bag of plums and lemons. Hello, he said in a voice gritty like sand, and I didn't know if he was speaking to the towering oak tree, the concrete bench, the woolly stars, or me. But I decided to say hello back, nodding my head, almost recognizing his face as one imprinted deep in the folds of my brain, and I almost made it through a full day without thinking of his possum-tailed hair, wooden eyes, and copper hands. I almost forgot that I wasn't a whole woman, and the brown paper sack ripped, yellow and purple fruit, beckoning me to chase. Okay. I'm going to move over to page 20 to In Line at Trader Joe's. This was another one based on something that really happened to me when I was in line at Trader Joe's. Yeah. In line at Trader Joe's, a white-haired woman asked me what day it was. Thursday, October 17th, I said. I didn't know if she was testing my sanity or hers, but she immediately dropped her red plastic basket behind the shelf with pumpkin bars and chocolate peanut butter cups, covered her pink lips with her grandmotherly hands, and said, "Oh dear," as she blankly limped out the store through the automatic doors. I didn't know if I should tell the cashier to stop scanning my mango yogurts, but I slipped my card in the machine to pay, not knowing if she forgot her son's birthday, or if she was late to book club, or happy hour, or if she needed to pray at the cemetery before the gates closed. And I couldn't remember the last time I replaced the flowers on my dad's grave. And I hit the glass doors with my red cart as I tried to remember where I parked my car. All right, I'm gonna move to page 25 and read to you row 12, seat A. I was a little drunk after some Chardonnay at the airport bar, where I'd slouched on a stool, legs crossed, grading essays in purple ink. Now on the plane, it was not full, and there was an empty seat between me and some stranger. I didn't want to flip through a magazine found in the seat back pocket, listen to top hits of the 1980s, or chit chat with my roommate. I wanted a moment in my window seat to enjoy my rare inebriation, to let my mind sift through sand for rubies in the extra gray leather space. I wanted to gaze out the window, to dream of leaping onto Mars, where I would lay in its red dust alone, making dirt angels visible by telescope before returning, ready to sober up. So when the stranger began to speak, I fantasized punching him in his chubby nose. Instead, I blabbered about how my sister is becoming my brother and how my mother won't call him his preferred name. That was actually Shani there, who I was on my way to their engagement party in the airport when I came up with that poem. Santa Barbara, this one was by a request of mine. I don't know if he's here or not, but by somebody I used to work with at Channel 10. It's for Santa Barbara. Oh, there you are, John. Yep, there you are. So yeah, he's a reporter at Channel 10. I've got some Channel 10 friends here tonight. And so this was his request. So I said, all right, I will read that for you, John. And this is, the teacher in me is going to tell you this is a conceit which is an extended metaphor throughout. So if you're going to, kind of think about those things that you're longing for, that it's hard to grasp, that's what this poem is about. Santa Barbara, page 29. She fell in love with the town she couldn't live in. Narrow streets, ocean on one side, mountains on the other, a job teasing her to come. The scent of jasmine and tranquility, but she couldn't move there. It understood her as she drank its wine and tongued its rich chocolate truffles, watching people who weren't her neighbors returning to their postcard homes. This town stole her soul. She traveled alone, but not alone, so she couldn't stay. Face unwrinkled, but eyes of history. Hot rain dropped as her chest rose and fell, uncold, memorizing the view she would visit again in the twilight moments of sleep. And she ate apples instead of raspberries that tasted like drinking champagne with nothing to celebrate. This is another one for you, Sandra. Why doesn't she have any wrinkles on her face? This is the one that she wrote the blurb, which I'm grateful that she wrote the blurb on the back of my book. She mentioned this poem in it, so I thought I would read this one specifically for Sandra tonight. So page 33, why doesn't she have any wrinkles on her face? Maybe it's because she didn't spend enough time with the wind battering her face, or she never squinted while staring at the sun, and she didn't pause to think about children dying in the streets, or maybe it's because her jaw was sewn shut with flesh-colored thread, or maybe she couldn't find the energy to be angry when her foot was stepped on again. Or maybe birds didn't spin round her head while she was asleep. But it could be because she wears a mask. And on a rare day, when she lifts that mask, you see broken glass embedded in her skin. And there's also a television screen in her eyes playing back scenes from the war in which her husband fought. And a map on her forehead that has never been unfolded. Or if you push her hair aside next to her right ear, you might notice a small tattoo of a lock with no key. All right, let's see, I'm gonna skip that one. All right, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit more here to page 65. This poem is March 19th, 2003. A little backstory on this one. My firstborn son will turn 18 2 weeks from today. He was born 3303. He's already accepted into college. I'm pretty darn proud of this kid. This is about, I gave birth alone while my then husband was at war, at the beginning of the war during shock and awe. March 19th was the first day of that shock and awe. And I literally sat, watching CNN, kind of glued to the chair with, my baby nursing him. So that's the story behind this one. March 19th, 2003. 7-pound, dark-haired baby nursing from my breast. Half drinking, half dreaming. Well, I wonder if his dad will ever hold him. Orange and red raindrops fall from the sky as I sit, not blinking, in my brown chair. My husband presses a black button with his thumb from the back seat of his jet, releases a missile that kills an enemy. A child? The distance from the cloud to the ground is too great to know what's ablaze. Is that fireball heading for his plane? I try to breathe, but the air won't leave my lungs. The two of us, new mother, sleepy baby, bonded to this brown chair, watching the world burn. And I'm just gonna move over to 66, and we'll do 66 and 67. So Memory by Scent. This is another one of those that, totally true story of, pretty much exactly what happened here with my youngest son, Kellen, who is 8. Memory by Scent. Sitting under a pine tree in the grass, my son plays with a plastic sphere, trying to move a tiny steel ball through a maze, his tongue out as he concentrates. A daughter pushes her mother in a wheelchair next to the park, and they both smile at us, the same smile, from the same face, one with deeper wrinkles and wiser eyes. I wonder if the mother is from the memory care center across the street, and if a twilight walk is their evening routine. Their smiles tell me the story of why the nursing home built next, filled with the cracks of baseball bats and children's shrieks when they are caught playing tag. I start to count my son's eyelashes, and I name all 5 freckles on the right side of his face. Without warning, the lone pine smells like an entire forest. And then Lauren, I don't know, kind of discussions you all have had in class. I remember being a part of these discussions, but if you were wondering if it's about a miscarriage, it is. And then in my mind, I named that baby Lauren that I lost when I was about 12 weeks pregnant a long time ago. I wanted to plop backwards in the snow and wave my arms and legs up and down, making a snow angel next to you. I wanted to read Where the Wild Things Are with a flashlight under a blanket fort with you. I wanted to run with you through a meadow, picking every dandelion, blowing seeds in the wind. I wanted to jump the waves, holding your hand, while we looked for sand dollars together. Instead, there was blood, and somebody must have yanked the bones from my body because I crumpled into a lifeless heap of flesh on the linoleum floor. I swear I smell baby powder, and a friend left flowers on the porch. Let's see, I've got a couple other marks here, which am I gonna do? I think I'm gonna end with this one. I'm gonna go back to page 50. Well, I've got one more, a new one that I'm gonna read after this from my book, just to get everybody's gauge on what that is. But this was page 50 called Undone. I wrote this one from something my Aunt Teresa said to me. Her husband had been dead for many years, but she was still upset that he wasn't making her coffee anymore. So I was like, I'm gonna turn that into a poem. And so I did. It's called Undone. When he died, he didn't brew her coffee anymore. She yelled at a him not there. How dare you leave me without instructions? Her fingers didn't know which buttons to touch. Should she add water to the 8 or 10 mark on the pot? So she sat on a swing in a park next to the nearest Dunkin' Donuts, staring at the orange and pink sign, watching customers cradle their steaming cups as they left the shop. She wasn't ready to go in and utter her order. Nothing fancy, just a plain black coffee. She didn't know if she ever would be. She pumped her legs and let the cold Massachusetts wind push her ever so gently. I'm gonna try one last one out on you all that is brand spanking new. I'm gonna tell you the backstory of this after. My title is, I met you at a McDonald's before you were shipped to Vietnam and you signed your letters, Love, Ken. December 27th, 1968. Hope you are fine, enjoying the Christmas holiday and your school vacation. I heard you had to go without a white Christmas. Guess if I can, so can you, haha. I wish we had become better acquainted before I left, but as things are, who knows, maybe I'll see you when I get home. Hard to believe I've been here 1 month already and only have 11 more to go. Man, this sure is a screwy war. Can't figure out what we were trying to prove here. I think it's just a money hoax, which poor, young, innocent guys are paying in blood and flesh. Well, anyway, I'm fine. Don't worry. I'm taking good care of myself. Your concern is extraordinary. I only wish everybody was like you. For letters are the most sacred thing we have here. January 4th, 1969. Hi, hope you are feeling fine. I miss you, Kathy, and all my friends back home. You probably read about us. The 9th Division, wiped out on a VC stronghold on a sweep. You're probably having fun, I hope. You must be having finals in school, I suppose. It's rather sad here. Just warfare. Can't seem to get used to it. Don't worry, though. I'm doing my best, and that, plus faith in God, should get me home safely. Home seems so far away here that it almost seems like it doesn't exist. So the story of that is that is a found poem from letters that my mom gave me between her and this Corporal Kenneth Johnson. And there are no more after this letter. He died in combat. So I hate to leave you on a down note there, but just wanted to see how you all felt about that poem so we can talk about it when we get to the Q&A later. But again, thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate everybody who's made it out tonight, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Betsy. Big round of applause. And I just want to say that I remember you telling me that you were going to be back with the book very soon, and you followed through on your promise. So congrats, and I'm so happy that we were able to do this evening. Wonderful reading. All right.
Thank you. Not as excited as me, but thank you so much.
Well, we're going to keep it going with our next and final reader for the evening, and then we'll have a time for some question and answers. So I'm very honored to introduce our next reader. Ron Salisbury is kind of a big deal, people. I mean, in addition to teaching poetry for the past 40 years, he was selected as our inaugural poet laureate for San Diego and will serve through this year, maybe a little bit longer. It takes a serious commitment to the literary community to be distinguished with the laureateship, and Ron has worked hard to earn this honor. Since moving back to San Diego 13 years ago, Ron has taught classes and workshops in poetry for San Diego Writers, Inc. He graduated from Sdsu with a Master's in Fine Arts and Poetry in 2016. And his book, Miss Desert Inn, was the winner of the 2015 Main Street Rag Poetry Prize, as well as a finalist for the Anthony Hecht Poetry Prize, finalist for the ABZ First Book Contest, and first runner-up for the Birmingham Pollock Prize in Poetry. He has been widely published in journals and distributes a weekly poem via email missive, which I will say personally has been a highlight of my inbox throughout this entire quarantine. Of Miss Desert Inn, poet Sherwin Bitsui lauds, "It has taken a lifetime for Ron Salisbury to summon these poems from the depths of what makes us human. We are fortunate to journey through memory and time with such a gifted poet." So please join me in welcoming Ron Salisbury.
Thank you, Megan. I hope I'm unlogged here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hear you loud and clear.
Good. It's so wonderful to be back and reading for Sdsu. It's really exciting. And, it's kind of because I was in your class too. And it was, you keep thinking when you get a book that, you hope to go back to your alma mater. And it has come true, and I'm really happy to do this. Tonight I'm going to read, my book was published in 2015. Well, I was before I even started my last year at Sdsu. And that manuscript had been kicking around for 3 years. You listed some of the things that it had got before somebody finally grabbed it. And so the poems in it, the nearest one to me, the newest, is at least a decade, if not older. And then the other ones are older than that. And in a decade of writing, things change as we define our world, and our world changes, and we do too. So I'm just going to read a few from the book, and I'm going to read some more that have accumulated over this period of time as things have changed. So I'd like to start out by reading a poem called Severance Pay. And this is a little bit of an arc of me growing up in Maine, leaving Maine, going to New York City, and then on here to San Diego. It'll be a quick trip. I don't take long to get through those. So Severance Pay. Francis Abbott lost 3 fingers on the right hand, not the thumb or the pointer finger. Lucky, because you got to keep your job if you still had 2. They paid extra to work on the chipper, more than you could make anywhere else with a high school diploma in South Brewer, Maine in the 1950s. The Eastern Paper Mill had the best jobs in the area, but the cost was high. Uncle Ed knew the foreman, and 2 weeks after graduation, I was on the line, pulp hook in one hand, feeding 4-foot chunks in the hopper, cotton balls in my ears. I helped pull Francis out of the blades. At Benny's bar across the street after the 4 p.m. shift change, you'd find the chippers lifting a cold Narragansett with only 2 fingers, teasing a peanut out of a bag with a thumb. If you were crazy enough to work the line, you were old enough to sneak into Benny's for a beer. No one questioned the underage kid with a straggly mustache. The afternoon I caught the Greyhound bus to New York City, I stopped in to say goodbye to the guys. They all understood when someone wanted to leave while still whole. The lot of them on their stools saluting me as I left, 1, 2 fingers to their foreheads. Then in New York, which for a kid from Maine was an amazing experience, and you begin to meet people that are so attractive to you. And this is titled Macy's Herald Square, New York City, where this woman, Anaria, worked. Lithuania, the radio commenter says, could be at risk. He goes on to explain the Russians, but I went back to the first time I heard the word Lithuania, she lisped, because English felt like a strange peach in her mouth, she said. Lithuania. I grew up in Lithuania. Everyone was drinking too much, talking too loud, music, a siren on Avenue B, cabs hissing by on the wet pavement 3 floors below, hard to hear. And I just wanted to hear her say anything. Read the label on the bottom, dictionary. Say my name, God, just say my name. Once again for coffee, the last time when I brought her a Lupin where she worked selling women's gloves. The worlds then were not just language, but spun around different suns. I was just out of the Maine countryside. She seemed to have floated down from some lofty plane. In the 50 years between Lithuanias, how would it be now? Would the spheres spin closer now, run our fingers down the lines in each other's face, laugh at what happens after selling gloves? Or would there be anything left at all? Because Lithuania, the announcer says, is at risk. Now, this last one is here in San Diego, a few years ago. And it's, you know, a lot of poets write about the deities in their life. They talk to God, you know, Billy Collins has, Jack Gilbert, lots of other poets do. So I, you know, kind of co-opted their techniques. This is the Brahms, the composer. The sun rolls into the Pacific, spits up magenta and cochineal on the undersides of low clouds off the coast. On my small patio, the dog has his head on God's bare foot. God points with his fork at the sunset. That was a good idea. He watches me peel the avocado. You're getting old. Shouldn't you slow down? You're trying too hard. No, I say no. Slice the avocado into thin crescents. Did you like the Brahms last night, he asks. Just okay, I answer. The tall young woman in front looked like my last wife. I couldn't concentrate. Everything sounded like a loan. Squeeze a lime wedge over the slices, a few sprinkles of cayenne. God spears a crescent with his fork. This was another good idea. I gave you 3 wives. Wasn't that enough? No, I say, no. So those are from my book. And now, in the last decade, I began to write an awful lot of poems about being old. Being older in a world that celebrates the youth, and how a lot of the youth have expectations of how an old person should act, how an older person should act. And so I make fun of those expectations, and I make fun of the older ones who have given up and just go and hide, have no more goals left. So my writing now is filled with the ironic. I also write in a persona. I write a lot of poems in the voice of a guy named Reginald S. Ham, Reggie. And the neat thing about a persona is that you can make him say anything. You don't have to worry. Oftentimes we won't say some things, but put it in somebody else's voice and you can make them say anything. This first one is called Reggie's Blue Antelopes. You have to take off all your clothes and lie perfectly still, only our arms touching, Eunice said, reaching back to unsnap, then stepping out of her nothings. Reggie, in only his SpongeBob boxers, holding his stomach in, wished he'd chosen something different for the day, unaware of the rules for spotting blue antelopes. The swollen alfalfa tufts waved in the breeze. Ants and other bugs, aroused, crawled into places only seen in the shower. Early in the afternoon, Eunice started moaning and grabbed his thigh. Didn't you see them? Don't you see them? Don't you see? Reggie hoisted up on an elbow and sighted across the pink of Eunice. I can almost make them out, he said. Keep squeezing. Adult education. The guy told Reggie, Christ blessed a chicken. That's why there are eggs at Easter. And there were only red ones because all they had was beet juice. No, wait, Reggie said. Doesn't it have something to do with pagan religion? Nah, the guy said. That's just for the rabbits. Christ blessed a chicken. Reggie checked Google, the Bible, even the priest at St. Catherine's. Nothing. Just a strange look from the priest. Jesus, Reggie thought. All these years. What else don't I know? Surfing Black's Beach. The Technicolor smog at sunset was troubling. Reggie cleaned his glasses on his shirt tail and squinted west again. It was either the face of God or his father wearing a tangerine bandana around his head, the streaky clouds creating a haloish swirl above the face. Did God have a halo? His father sure didn't. But now that face was melting like a pat of butter in a fry pan. Damn, thought Reggie, these cheap blood pressure pills from Tijuana just don't work that well. A dog with blue teeth stopped to ask what time it was. 6-ish, said Reggie. The universe. I can hear laughter in the background when Father calls to tell me, man is without qualities. Then I can hear someone yell, I dropped a piece of pie on the floor. Someone else says, you've always been somewhat of a fool. Dad, where are you, I ask, forgetting he died in 1977. He hangs up laughing, and I begin to think that this really is a universe with no one in charge. In 17 minutes, it'll be 2019. But that is too arbitrary because it's already 2019 in Phoenix and Denver and was yesterday in Sydney, Australia. Who's on the phone? Eunice asks from beneath her pile of pillows and flannel sheets. I think it was my father, I say. Oh, how is he? She asks. And then I hear her little sputter snore start again. The almost full moon paints the room in shades of the same gray. The two dogs watch me in case there is a chance of biscuits. The end of truth. This is about when Reggie has a pretty much fatal heart attack. Reggie knew it was an alien, not God, when it stepped from behind the California sycamore at 2 p.m. in August. It wasn't just the full formal wear with swallowtails and absence of eyes, but the color of skin, a sallow green not seen since leisure suits. It was too late to run. Besides, Reggie could hardly keep up with a guy in 4B in his walker. He'd been enjoying the sun and a warm cup of postum when the alien appeared holding a fish in one hand, a rake in the other. Reggie felt the ox of truth lower himself onto his chest, postum tipping over, and the last dim vision of the alien saluting Reggie with his trout. The conjunctive mood. If I were, and you, Eunice, wherever you are, were, then we would be the couple we remember in Napa, slightly fogged on Chardonnay samplers. But the subjunctive being, as it were, the Chardonnay was corky. Let me replay this trampoline moment. If I were not that me, and you were you, but not the you in Napa, and the Chardonnay was Pinot Noir from that small vineyard on the hillside in Temecula that hot afternoon, would now be any different from now? Speculation, as it were, keeps us from the us we are and always were. If you listen as it nears, you can hear the heart with one verb break. Now, Reggie in my world had the first job that Adam took away from him. That's because Reggie lost the job. How he lost his first job. When Reggie was naming the animals, there was a line around the tree, along the Tigris, way along the Tigris. Each one waited while Reggie laid hands, then whispered in each ear, Rowdy, Spot, Ginger, Pongo. The clouds boiled over the garden, lightning sparked, wind a hot breath. No, no, the voice thundered, not that kind of name. So that's Reggie. Here's another theme. I love the idea of guardian angels. Almost every culture has some kind of deity or some kind of spirit that basically is in charge of taking care of the souls of the humans that live in their realm that's with it. But my guardian angels that I look at, they have a heck of a hard job taking care of, people like me and like some of my friends. It must be very tiring. And oftentimes they don't make it. They have to quit. I've just lost my whole thing here. Hang on a minute. There we go. So this first one is called Angel. I'm tired of angels who just hang around watching our troubled world, only report the failures. I'm tired of angels with ice on their wings who have to spend hours warming in the weak winter sun before starting work. But some of them have ignored the arrogance that comes with omnipotence and grovel down here in the muck. Take mine, for instance. She's tattooed her wings on her shoulders for ease and a Harley insignia on her thigh for the hell of it. She has a job in the day pumping gas and at night tells me about life if she's not too tired. We talk a lot about love because it's what she can't do. It breaks all the rules, she said, and I'm already on probation. But maybe I'm falling in love with you, I tell her. I can stop it, she says, pauses, but I won't. Why not? Because, she answers, love is what happens when you can't take it anymore. You're not the most exciting assignment I've had, but at least you don't knock me around. Now, in this particular one, which is called Eben Salisbury, which is named my grandfather, and it has a line from a friend of mine, a poet in San Diego named Terry Spawn, that triggered this whole thing. And this one, the guardian angel has quit, can't take it anymore. And the replacement is arriving in a taxi. Eben Salisbury. He arrives in a taxi, makes the driver give him a receipt. There's also a line of break in here a minute. I mentioned bourbon and branch. Now, branch water was supposed to be this purest spring water in the whole northeast of the United States that I grew up in the state of Maine. So branch water was considered to be this purest water. So you didn't mix your bourbon with just water. You found branch water. They even had a brand called branch water. He arrives in a taxi, makes the driver give him a receipt. I'm watching from the glider on the porch, just settled in with the first bourbon and branch. The ancient clock in the parlor bongs 4 p.m. Terry Spawn had left no more than an hour ago. He stopped over to see if I'd started drinking yet. No, I said. I've taken the pledge from Pastor Alec that I'd wait until 4 p.m. And he said, well, shit, why am I here then? And I said, got me. He looked me straight in the eye and said, why can we only glimpse the basic elements of our existence in the trace of their decay? Then tromped off the porch and down the road. And now this angel arrives in a taxi. You can tell he's an angel because the tips of his wings hang just below his overcoat. He's uncomfortable, leaning on the stair rail. So I say, come on up, take a seat. Get yourself a drink. The bourbon's on the counter, the branch in the clay bowl in the fridge. He looks confused. Make it look like this. And I held up mine that was a soft color of light honey. He comes back, sits beside me on the glider and swallows half. Hey, fella, take it easy. You ain't used to this. Don't they give you some kind of instructions? His eyes are watering and he just shakes his head no. You know who the Dodgers are? Shakes no. You're filling in for the other fellow who quit, aren't you? He shakes yes. I click my glass on his. Hell, this is going to be no challenge at all. Now in this one, the guardian angel has also quit. Can't take it any longer. His name is Howard. It's called Poor Angels. Poor angels have to deal with humans. Imperfect design in spite of the unsayable's intent. Do others have guardians? Living creatures according to their kind? Would the shepherd of foxes have an easier time? What about okapes, the oarfish, belugas? Yes, guardian of a beluga who Howard was assigned after he couldn't take taking care of my soul anymore. Beat under the stress of 3 wives, a passion for mediocre wine, collection of toasters, the ongoing questions of faith. Howard, hunched on the pack ice, 87 miles north of Dutch Harbor in the Bering Sea. His beluga considering herring. The tick in his left eye finally gone, blowing on his hands, a red plaid hat with ear flaps, wings wrapped around his shoulders like a shawl. So there's a few of my angel poems. And now I have just a few short ones because I have loved writing short poems and have been doing a lot of that lately. This one's a little bit longer. Short poems, you know, they never win a contest, but look at Charles Simics, look at some of the other great poets, and it's a shame. Somehow it's as though a short poem cannot adequately describe our existence in this world, and so you couldn't possibly give it a big prize. It has to travel some mileage instead of just wowing us. Not that these are necessarily wowers. This one's a little longer. It's called Poker Night, and I'm imagining a big metaphor for life here. Poker Night. Time is not what is, but what was. What is has already happened. Time is memories of what was. We measure time with memory. The year shuffles, then deals the day to each of us. Ace, ace, a deuce to you, joker. You open with 2 days in Hawaii, the beginning you thought. I call with an afternoon in Ravenna, 2 limoncellos, the Adriatic over there. Finally, I thought. God with a golden protractor and his favorite mechanical pencil designed this on a pad of graph paper. And now 2 short ones. See, which ones am I going to read first? I'll read this one. There's 2 islands off the Carolina coast on the East Coast, Chincoteague and Assateague. And on them are these residual wild horses that were probably left by the Spanish or some of the first ones that landed there. And they have been managed and kept by the people of the people in the Carolinas On Assateague's 100 and on Chinoteague is 50 of these, and they keep the population so they can live wild while they're there. So I mentioned Chinoteague in relationship to what they look like. They're wonderful looking ponies. This is called Day Spring. Night folded up the dark into little squares and loaded them on the back of his pony and led her away. Chincoteague, I'd say. Then this one, Valise, a portmanteau. We decided to sleep together again because we missed each other. Difficult though, so much luggage, some alligator, some plain canvas. Thank you, folks. Thanks for listening. And Megan, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Ron. That was wonderful. And I will say, I remember you were in my class and we were in the shabby little room in Hepner Hall. I know anybody who's been to SDSU, you know the room I'm talking about. It's on the second floor. I just got such a sense of nostalgia for that room. But I remember thinking, knowing that you had this collection already and being intimidated by you and thinking, what am I going to teach this guy about poetry? He's got a book. So happy that we kind of, again, come somewhat full circle. Now we're back and you as Poet Laureate. All right, everybody. So we're going to switch now into a little bit of Q&A. So if you do have a question for either Betsy or Ron or both, please feel free to use the little hand raise function, or you can put it into the chat and I'll try to make sure we get to as many as possible in the time we have available. But I thought we might start out with a question, and this is both for you, Ron, and for you, Betsy. Since you are, part of our local San Diego poetry community, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about maybe what you see as special or unique about our San Diego poetry community, or just about being part of that community.
I would say go ahead, Ron. I think you probably know more about this than I do in your position.
When I first moved to San Diego, this is my second go around here, the second rodeo. And the first one was in the late 70s. And San Diego was the home of the Pretty Good Symphony and the OK Opera. And that sure has changed. And that's the same way as that, nobody ever went to San Diego to be an artist. You left San Diego and went somewhere else to be an artist. And I have seen that change through the schools and through the wonderful vibrancy. And the poetry scene has been here, and it is alive, and it is alive in all sections of our county. And there are these dedicated people that are out there running workshops and running readings that is just a vibrancy that's there. I see them at Writers Inc. I see enthusiasm. I see people wanting to learn of all ages. And it is an exciting time and an exciting place to be. And Zoom actually has opened up the doors. My classes are twice as large now. And again, I have people in Canada and people in Arizona that are part of my student base now. And they don't have to drive down through the crazy traffic to get to, Point Loma to come to Writers Inc.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. I think it's just a great community here, and I see all kinds of little communities within communities that are very encouraging to other people to write and to read. Within SDSU itself too, there all kinds of things. I remember Ethan was forming a creative writing group. Probably not too long before COVID started, so I'm not sure where that got to, but it's just wonderful to see more and more of that coming out, and just everywhere now too. I mean, everybody's crazy about Amanda Gorman after her inaugural poem. So I think that that's just such a positive thing for every community, including San Diego.
Well, one thing I've noticed that this kind of the quarantine has done, and Ron, you were saying Zoom has expanded enrollment in your San Diego Writers in classes, and Betsy, you were saying that kind of these communities are coming together, is that I feel like San Diego was somewhat siloed. You had these great, it's kind of enriching pods spread out throughout the very large, city. But I feel like having a chance to get together virtually has really brought together a lot of these communities. And that, we are seeing, like you said, Ron, that people left here to become artists. But now that, we're seeing San Diego-based artists is a thing now. And I feel like this opportunity to gather in these virtual spaces has maybe helped to heighten that, to accentuate that. And I'm hoping that we find a way to kind of continue once we go back to whatever degree of normalcy, we're going to re-enter, hopefully relatively soon. All right, so I know we have some other questions. Again, if you want to put them into the chat or use the little hand raise function, I can call on you. Yes, Rin, great to see you. If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hi, Megan. Yeah, this is so fun. It's great to see Betsy and Ron. I'm really enjoying this. Ron, I love that line, love is what happens when you can't take it anymore. I just love that. But then you burst my bubble, because I want my guardian angel to not leave me when he can't take it or she can't take it anymore. So can you talk about that? Why do our guardian angels leave us when they can't take it anymore, if that's supposed to be love?
That first one, there's no indication of leaving. That was one of the very first angel poems I ever wrote. But then I began to think about all of the work that guardian angels have to do, and I just had a feeling that they might be disappointed in us. And so and very truthfully, just from the structure of a poem, it's a heck of a lot fun and a lot more interesting if they have a struggle than it is if it's all flowers and roses at the end. So there's only so much of that stuff you can get away with.
All right, thank you for that. I know, and I saw in the chat, a lot of folks really enjoyed those guardian angel poems, and we did too in the classroom. What other questions might we have? Or who else might have a question? What I saw, yeah, D'Angelo.
Yeah, so I was a big fan of the poems in your biblical section. And I was wondering, what was your inspiration for writing poems in the perspective of people like Eve and Noah?
Is that addressed to me?
Yes, my apologies.
And that's okay. Would you repeat that again? My biblio section. What do you mean?
The biblical section. So there was a section in your
the biblical. Thank you. Biblical. Yeah. Well, I just thought the Bible needed rewriting. It was as simple as that. And I figured I'd put it in Maine in the late 1950s. I thought that people could respond to it. So I've written many different passages to bring it into, contemporary times. I don't know if I have an answer more than that. It just struck me as the thing to do. I thought the Bible needed help. And there I was.
Thank you very much.
One of the great opportunities in the position of a poet. Rewrite the Bible because we can. Okay, I see Hannah has a hand raised. Hannah, what's your question?
Hi, my question is actually for Betsy, if that's okay. So I just wanted to ask, did you happen to see yourself, like, while you were a grad student at Sdsu, did you happen to see yourself, like, becoming the San Diego Poet Laureate? Or, like, did you have any idea that you would become such a renowned poet throughout the San Diego community?
I wouldn't say I'm quite renowned yet, but as, I appreciate that. It's my first book out there, and I've got a chapbook coming out, and I'm working on writing a third one. My aspirations are just honestly just to keep writing, to keep teaching, and whatever comes of that comes of that. I'm really happy where I am right now in my life, and I'm like I said, one of my first goals was to come back and read in this class I am absolutely thrilled to be here.
Right. Thank you, Betsy. Well, congratulations as well on the chapbook coming out in October. That's super exciting. Let's see. I think the next hand I saw was Benjamin. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, my question's for Ron. I just had a question about Reggie, your persona. Like, do you ever, at sometimes with a certain incident or like idea, do you decide to use Reggie, or do you decide to use, like, I guess, your own voice? You know, because you said Reggie was a persona, so I don't know if you pick and choose when to become Reggie.
There's many poets have told you, many teachers, that you never get to pick your poems. They pick you. So, you know, I open the front door and Reggie's there, you know, so it's as simple as that. It happens with Reggie. I don't set out and say, today I'm going to write a Reggie poem. I wear my poetry goggles every day looking for opportunity. And sometimes Reggie's on the other side, and sometimes it's me, and sometimes it's somebody else. So there's less of that. I mean, I write on a schedule, and that is not everyone does that, but I try to produce all of the time. And I do it so that I'm in charge of the muse, rather than waiting for the muse to come to me while I'm in line at the grocery store, you know, and then I can't write anything. So I write every day. It's a job. You sit down in the chair and you write. Now, some days it doesn't work. Sometimes there's no Reggie, sometimes there's no Ron, but then I've got a good grocery list, or, you know, a to-do list. So it usually, the more ironic it is, the more crazy fun of things I'm making, especially of older people, then Reggie gets to use the voice, not me. It's easier that way.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, so there's a couple questions in the chat. I'm going to get to, we have just a couple other hand raised as well, and then I'm going to switch to the chat. So Rebecca has a question.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This one is for Betsy's, for your book, This Woman is Haunted. So when you're putting together all your poems for that book, do you like have all kinds of stuff laid out and you're sequencing them as you go? Or like, do you have a pattern of how you're putting them into your book? Or do you just pick and choose, or do you write as you go?
That's a great question. So I just write poems is what I do. And it wasn't like, with this book, it was not with the intent of necessarily making it into a book. You just write. And then it's crazy, all of these different themes that come up and emerge as you write. I mean, like the last section I read from, was my motherhood section. And I have 4 boys. So that's obviously a big part of my life. I look at it, it just kind of worked out. Like I started to see all of the themes that was emerging from my writing. I call one like, kind of just like my generic womanhood section, that's come out that I think a lot of women can relate to. I mean, and then there's a relationship section as well. And it's just like all these poems that you're writing, you're like, wait, that can fit in here. Oh. And you see like these patterns that just emerge in your writing. So, my book was set in 4 sections of different aspects of womanhood. And I never, wrote thinking this is, going to go in my book here. It's like, oh, this is how I started to write and what fits best, with all these other things and how they work together. And for me, it was a lot of spreading out on my floor, printing, spreading out, like tossing one aside and putting one here and putting another one there, over and over again. So, it's quite the process, but, it's kind of more organic than thinking like I'm writing this for my book, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Betsy. I know that's always something interesting that comes up in the discussion in terms of poetry, is how does that sequencing work? Let's see, Jorge has his hand raised. What's your question?
Hi, this is for Betsy. I'm always curious to see how poets just kind of get into that writing mindset. when it comes to finally getting the words down onto the piece of paper, or I guess in more modern terms, like getting the words on the screen. So I'm just curious to see if you have like a certain image or like a certain like activity or like a certain like exercise that kind of gets you into that writing mindset.
I've got to say, with listening to Ron, he's got his, his disciplined writing time. I wish I was better with that. I don't have that disciplined writing time. I'll tell you what I do. Something will like, boom, just hit me and inspire me. I've got this giant list going like in my phone of just like notes of like a random image that I've seen or a random scene that I saw that I just write, have to put it down at that very moment. Sometimes like I go to bed and I have a poem in my head, and I've learned now I can't sleep if that poem's in my head. I've got it, it's just better to get up and write it down, get out of my cozy covers and get up and just write it down. For me, being a mom of four, at times to have that disciplined writing time. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll just sit there and think, I haven't written anything in a week or 2 weeks. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to write something, or I'll just go through the notes that are in my phone or wherever I've randomly placed notes. And I don't do it in a screen. When I'm writing, my original stuff is like all like here. I've got 2 different journals like right here next to me on my desk that I'm writing poems in. I've got journals everywhere. I've got journals over in my nightstand over there. I've got journals in my purse. I've got them everywhere. So, if I have a minute to write, I will. But yeah, it's like, and it's little things like, like the one that I was reading, when I was sitting there with my son, and he's, we're watching one of my other children in a soccer practice, and he's, tilting this, plastic sphere, doing this game. And then I see these women walking by, and it's just like, boom, it's just like, that's a poem. Or the one that I read that I said that was for my Auntie Teresa. And she just said, when he died, he didn't brew coffee anymore. I was like, boom, that's a poem, like I had to write that down right away. And nobody, these things are always going through my head. Nobody can see it. Like, my Auntie Teresa didn't know, like, I'm writing a poem right now that you said that, but I was. So there you go.
Well, Ron, we have a question for you in the chat. This one is from Karen, and she asks, so a few years have passed since Miss Desert Inn came out. How often do you revisit those poems apart from giving readings? Or do they come up for you more often?
Nope. That was then. This is now. I love them back there, but they're history. I write differently now. And next year will write differently than I write now. And because my whole life is oriented towards the existence of getting up tomorrow and not worrying about what today was or what the next day is, but living right at that time. So those are a wonderful thing. It was an event that happened to my life that has significantly changed it. And it is wonderful to look at those things, and I enjoy going back through them and picking them out in order to do readings. But no, they're there. Now I'm here. And so it is a different kind of thing.
Well, in relation to some of these newer poems, the persona of Reggie, Barb wanted to know, when did Reggie appear? Did you suddenly reach a certain age in which he just showed up at your front door, as you said?
Okay, if you've got like 2 minutes, I'll tell you. Reggie started in Las Vegas. I worked in the casinos. I was a pit boss in Las Vegas for 11 years. And one thing that happened before they were a little bit more judiciously curious, they changed the rules. So if you won $10,000, you would have to give your social security number in order to be able to pay. This was at the casino a long time back in the early 70s, late 60s. So I had the great idea that I could make some extra money by giving them false social security numbers. And I found a little ad on the back of a book that said, send in your number and we'll send you a plastic card. So I made up names and numbers for about 8 or 9 different cards, and they shipped them to me. They were plastic cards, and I would sell them for $500. When I left Las Vegas, I had one left, and it was Reginald S. Ham. So there you go. And I needed a voice, and Reggie just was there. So.
Well, I hope the Gaming Commission doesn't see this video, Ron. They're gonna come
Yeah,
out.
I know, but they can't get anything. I've got an old dog, so.
All right, thank you for that and for the anecdote as well. So Betsy, I'm going to switch back to you. I feel like there's a couple questions that are centering around a quote that we actually started the discussion of your collection with, and it's from Muriel Rukeyser, wonderful poet, everybody, by the way. But she said, if one woman were to tell the truth about her life, the world would split open. And I feel like that was a really great way that's, to sort of encapsulate some of the essence of your collection. And there was a question that in the text you were exploring the secrets that women keep. Are all of these poem stories personal, or are you helping ours, to tell our stories as well? Are you encouraging, other women to kind of tell these stories, these secrets as well?
Yeah, even, as I was going through some of the reading, like some of them I was telling you, like we're 100% real. Some of them were like, 1% real, maybe there was some inspiration that in my life. For example, the For Some Reason poem that I read tonight, when I wrote it, I was 39, about to turn 40 at that time. So that played a part in there. And there's, a little part, I did grow up, near this neighbor named Robin. But that a lot of that is, most of that's fiction, but there are a lot of poems in there that are very real or close to real or based on real stuff. And I do think, women especially, I think, tend to, just shove things down a lot, I see the question over there about, my poem, I Don't Feel Like a Lady. Mm-hmm. Just kind of like that juxtaposition of, having to, conform to what this everybody thinks you should be. And for me, I'm divorced now, but I was a Navy wife for 20 years. And I think that there is this, constraint placed on you, like, this is what you're supposed to be. And so you just kind of, you take who you are and you push it aside a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And, to find, just that realness when you just like, sometimes it just bursts out into all these things. And I think that, we should all be more authentic and be more, real and talk about these things. Even like the poem Lauren, which is about a miscarriage, people don't talk about that, very much. Like, I felt when I went through it, I felt very alone at that time, so I think it's important to talk about these things that, we don't necessarily want to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, thinking about that, poetry is a great place, I think, in a platform. It can be, a platform to address these certain things and just to show others that we're not alone.
Right. Yeah. Not all of them are, about me necessarily too. Like, some of them are from other people. So yeah, it is a good voice to tell other people's stories and other things that other women are going through. Yeah. It's not just personal things that I've experienced at all.
Well, kind of along these lines in terms of like content and theme, Betsy, there was a question from Danielle in the chat that your poems seem to intersect personal grief with a political slant. Mm-hmm. Was this intentional, or for you, what effects does or could this have?
I think with this one, it really wasn't a whole lot of intent. It was just my life at that time, some of the things that I'm going through. The new book that I'm working on right now that I'm writing, I think, I do have more intent with this one, which is different because I haven't had the intent before of, kind of pulling into that, like the Vietnam poem that I read to you at the end tonight. Like I do have a political intent in there. I think, you don't necessarily have one necessarily when you start writing, but it just comes out and it just is. So yeah, hope that answers the question.
All right, let's see. Actually, Ron, I'm going to switch back to you for a minute because this was also something that came out in our discussion of your book. And we know we did look at Miss Desert Inn. And so we wanted to know a little bit about the title. Why Miss Desert Inn? Was it inspired by essentially what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? We have
No, it comes out. Miss Desert Inn was my first wife. She was a showgirl I worked in the casinos and she became a doctor at Scripps. And the reason I'm in San Diego is she said, I'm going to San Diego, you can come. And so I said, okay. So I quit and came here. And so this well, what was unique in early life became psychotic later on. But I mean, that happens with all of us. Wonderful person, but it was my first wife and she was Miss Desert Inn. So the whole section that talks about her and the showgirls and everything else was as closest to actual story because I lie a lot in my poems. You know, I figure that's what I'm supposed to do, you know, because sometimes it's a lot more interesting. Although those years were very interesting. And so most of those are stories surrounding that whole event. Well, she put herself through college and actually saving money for grad school by being a showgirl at the Folies Bergère, and then went on to be a doctor. So, there you go. That's the title.
Good to know. And I kind of, figured that was a shaping moment that kind of worked its way into the poems that came before and the poems that came after. It felt
Yes.
somewhat, yes, like a centerpiece.
Yes, it was. Yep.
Well, we have a question in the chat from Ethan for both of you, which I think is a very interesting question. Ethan asks, does being a poet change the way you interact with life? Because you're always looking for poetic moments and putting yourself in places that will set you up for writing good poems.
I can answer first. I think I'm still on there. It sets you up for being poverty stricken. There's no money in poetry. You know, the only way you make any money in poetry is to go get a teaching job. And if you're an old white guy, there's not many opportunities for you because they don't think that you can attract any of the students that are out there going into the MFA program. So you have to find other ways to do it. So poetry has enriched my life. I would have it no other way, and I care not to do anything else, but it's been a great sacrifice. Now, I've lived a long and varied life, and poetry has been through it all of the way. But the last, shall we say, 12, 15 years have been wonderful because there was no other way that I had of making a living but deal with poetry. It's been an interesting journey. So be a poet, but you're only a poet on the hours that you're not teaching if you're going to be a poet, or working as a barista, or as a toll taker at a highway. Then you write, because the rest of it, there's only 4 people in the United States make their living off of poetry. You know?
Wait. There's no money in poetry, Ron? What?
Yeah. Is this a new surprise for you?
That's it. I'm gone. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I second what Ron says. Yeah, there's no money in it. Yeah, thanks for the question, Ethan. Ethan was one of my creative writing students, so I'm glad to have you here. I think, honestly, it goes through phases for me. I think, yeah, like at times, sometimes things are just like I said, they just hit you and you've got to write, something pops in there. And I think the more poetry that I'm reading, the more that I see the poetry in the world, which makes me want to write more poetry, because I'm seeing, where all these poems are. So I do think it does seem, but sometimes like I'm just an exhausted mom of 4, and it can be hard to see poetry in anything when all I want to do is crawl into my bed by 9 o'clock at night because I'm tired. But absolutely, I think the important thing is to keep reading, finding those poets that continue to speak to you, and so that you can see all that poetry in the world, which brings it to you. Like that blade of grass out there will just pop at you one day, or that dandelion that your son picked for you when you were out walking your dog. It'll become a poem. So yeah.
Megan, could I add something to that?
Of course.
Yeah, the raising 4 children and writing poetry is like juggling 8 balls in the air at once. And so I give you all kinds of credit to be able to find a time to write anything, because I've had 4 children in the past, and it was very difficult. So the last 13 years that I've said that I have dedicated myself to it have been, in a sense, a luxury. But here's the other thing too, is that I started writing when I was 11 years old. And that's all I've ever wanted to be, was a poet. And actually, I cannot not write. There's no way. I don't care what happens. I cannot not write. Now I have the privilege, although along with it comes a lot of sacrifice, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So you're fighting your way through finding time. And I'm finding all of the time now, and it's interesting. It's all consuming, and it's the best job I've ever had in my life, even though I wish to hell the pay was a little better.
Yeah, and if I'm cranky, that's what I need to do. You know, I need to be told, go right, you know.
Yeah.
All right, Hannah has a hand up, and I'm not sure if that's from earlier or if we have a question. Maybe that's from earlier. Okay, Jasmine.
Hello, I have a question for Betsy. Um, sorry, my cat's like. Okay, go down. Okay. So your last poem, Amen. I was wondering if that sort of was like implying to the idea that your poem collection was just kind of like, in a way, like a prayer or like a conscious stream of thought, and then you just sort of have this end of like, not necessarily a resolution, but just like, you know, the end of this chapter or this book. And I was just curious about that.
Yeah, it was like, you know, when we were talking about how I ordered the book and, you know, how, you know, I just write poems. It was originally called An Easter Amen. I think I wrote it around Easter, and, you know, working with Sandra when I was coming to, you know, writing my manuscript, you know, so you suggested, you know, just calling it Amen. And then I just thought, boom, I think it fits here at the end. And it does kind of, you know, I mean, because it's, the book takes you on a journey. And I, you know, I think it does have kind of a peaceful ending to it, you know, because there's a lot in there that's not so peaceful. So I think, you know, it was a nice note to end on.
All right, well.
Thanks, Jazz. You were one of my students too, just to acknowledge. Yeah, I had you in 280 as well.
Oh, yes, Jasmine is wonderful. So, well, speaking of endings, we're coming toward the end of our time here. I just want to be mindful of Zoom fatigue, because it is a real thing, y'all. So I was wondering if maybe we could conclude from hearing from both of you, Betsy and Ron, just a little bit about maybe your takeaways from your time in SDSU's MFA program. So whoever, yeah, Ron.
I'll start. How's that? I've got my mic open. You know, at my age, remember, I got this in 2016, so I was no spring chicken when I went there. And I was the oldest person in the whole goddamn program at that time. And I was treated like a senior citizen, which, you know, really irritated the hell out of me. But we soon learned that I wasn't. For me, it was a chance, and I didn't know what to expect, and I was disappointed, by the way. I thought I was going to learn more about poetry, and what I learned about was people, and what I learned about was the quality of people. And I have, from this program, as well as read a whole lot of stuff that I never thought I would read, because that was its value. Even though, you know, we go into these things almost self-taught, because where do you come from when you go to this thing? And basically, even though we try to be expansive in what we read, it's never what we're forced into read by others who say, read this, look at this, that was with it. So that was one of the major things, was that I read a lot, and I keep pressing my students into reading stuff they don't want to, because it's good for them to do that. But the other thing is community. I made a community that was there that all of these years afterwards, I'll have for the rest of my life. There are 7 of us that are tied to that program in something, that meet every Tuesday. This now in a driveway with masks on under a canopy. And we promote each other, we critique each other, and we support each other. And that community has traveled. There's one of them living in Nova Scotia, another in Colorado, and another one in Minneapolis. But there are still 4 of us here in San Diego that do come and meet together. So the community was something that is probably as valuable as any of the sheepskin that I was given. But then, you know, I realized early on, unfortunately, that sheepskin was not going to give me a job. And or if it was going to be teaching remedial English in you know, junior colleges, which I'm not really primed to do. That was with it. So I had to go out and forge my own sake. My community has helped me deal with that. Nothing that I do doesn't go through them. I may not agree with them, but it is the most wonderful support group in the world. So look to your community and take it with you. Don't leave it behind. Make it with you. That's the experience of this project.
Yeah, I would absolutely second everything that Ron says about that. You know, it is the community. I still have my community and those people that you know you can trust with your poems. I mean, you sit in these workshops, and sometimes these workshops are brutal. Sometimes you leave a workshop and you're nearly in tears, and all you want to do is go home and get in a bubble bath and have a glass of wine. I have absolutely been there, but it works and things get better. And you know, you find, okay, yeah, you know, it kind of hurt my feelings when this person said this, but they were right. I do need to cut, you know, half my poem out to make it good. You were right. This, you know, you have to take that time to step back from your writing. You know, and I always tell my students that all the time. You can't just write and boom, there it is. I have my son writing an essay that was technically due today, and he got his intro done. And I'm like, listen, you know, you got to write and take a step back. You can't just boom, 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 boom. You know, it takes work, and you know, and it takes work to do what we do as poets here too. And we work together, and it's a great community that you meet within SDSU. And yeah, like I came in there, I just kind of, you know, my youngest one was getting ready to go to kindergarten. I was writing poetry, you know, to help me get through some stuff in my life. Came across the programs, like, sure, I'll throw my name in there, got in, and I'm like, all right, I'm doing this. And, you know, it was definitely a huge learning experience. My undergrad is in journalism, so, you know, it's quite different for me, a different path for me. But I'm grateful that I have it, you know, because, you know, when I started college, I didn't know what I really wanted to do. And then you go back in, you know, as you get closer to, you know, my age in your 40s, you know, you start to know, hey, yeah, this is what I want to do. Like my son, who's going to start University of Redlands in the fall, I tell him, you might not know what you want to do now. You just go in, you do the best that you can with it. You'll figure it out, and you might change your mind later on. So just go in, just drink up everything that's in there. You know, find your people, find your community in there, and they will all help you, you know, get to that next step. And the difference between, like, you know, my first year writing and my third year writing, like, I mean, I think I have one poem in there maybe from my first year. Most everything else, you know, just dramatically different and improving over time.
Well, 2 last little things, because I believe in the shameless plug. Betsy, can you tell us a little bit about your new chapbook that's coming out in October?
Absolutely. My new chapbook is called Dragon in My Purse. You see in this book here, The Power of the Dragon, I think I'm actually going to change the title because, you know, you never stop writing the poem. It never stops. It has a different ending too in the chapbook, but the chapbook has a few overlaps from my motherhood section mainly, and, you know, several other new ones in there. But the Dragon in My Purse is focused mostly on motherhood there. And, you know, it comes from that poem where I found the drawing of the dragon in my purse from my son, Nicholas there. So yeah, that'll be out in October. I'm really excited about that one as well. So yeah, thank you for letting me plug.
Well, yes, well, thank you. We're going to keep our eye out for that. And then Ron, can you tell us a little bit about your poet laureate project, or what we should keep an eye out for?
I'll tell you about 2 things. One is that starting in April, there's going to be a series of monthly presentations of craft and support for poets of resilience here in San Diego. A chance to be able to, I'll have some guest poets join me, and we'll talk a little bit about craft, and we'll talk about the inspiration for poetry and what it has done to help us get through this particular time. There are 6 monthly presentations at the beginning of each month, starting with the National Poetry Month in April. And you'll be able to submit your poems that will be posted on the city's and the Poet Laureate site that's with it. I also get to pick 30 good examples of poets of resilience that will be published in the San Diego Poetry Annual. They're dedicating a section of this for me. So we're going to see how that goes. I already have a couple of people scheduled to join me that are local poetry teachers, and I'm going to be asking some others to join me too. The second thing that is wonderful is that I have to put in a plug for San Diego Writers Inc., which I feel is one of the most wonderful nonprofits that floats around here. They teach so many different classes at all degrees of complexity and level, and it's a wonderful support group. It's all on Zoom now, and it is a whole nonprofit. There's no money in poetry, and I also teach their poetry certificate, which we developed, which is 25 classes, 3 hours long, starting in the fall and going to the spring. It's like teaching a regular semester. And it is now branched to, I have to do 2 days because there's so many people. And the anticipation is that I'll have to add to 3 at this point. So there's so much interest in poetry that's going on that feels very vibrant. And it ties into obviously being poet laureate and being able to spread that around, which is part of my charge. My charge is to support not only San Diego, but poetry in San Diego. And so it is interesting working through the bureaucracy, but once you get through it, there's an opportunity to do things that I never would have been able to do for this love of my life without this opportunity. So I tend to take full advantage of it.
Well, I'm going to follow up with you because I'm going to need that information because I know our students would love to submit. Maybe they would love to be a part of San Diego Writers Inc. So everybody who's out there in the ether, I'm going to get more info from Ron, and we're going to get that out to y'all. But I want to take this opportunity to thank Betsy, thank Ron for a wonderful joint reading. Best way to kick off our spring semester. Feel free to unmute yourselves if you want to give them a real clap, everybody.
Thank you. This is wonderful.
Thank you all, gang.
All right, and thanks everybody for joining us, for being a fabulous audience. Come back again. We've got some wonderful events coming up next month. So look at that, our website at Sdsu MFA Community for events coming up, and check out the Hugh C. Hyde Living Writer Series on YouTube. All right, that's my last shameless plug, everybody. Thanks, Betsy. Thanks,
Love you,
Ron.
Betsy.
Take
Thanks,
care,
Megan. Good to see
everybody.
you. Thank
Bye
you
now.
for so many of you. Have a good night.
We love you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.